Okay, so having done our introductions on perspective for life and all of those kinds of things, we said we'll turn attention to some of the aspects of what's happening
And
in the
obviously,
mind
we
map.
assume that you're watching this in order.
No,
And
it's not watching in order,
it's
but
like, I
is
mean,
what it is.
yeah.
No
So
assumption there.
yeah. So
But
if
okay.
if we covered perspective for life, and it's going to be there. So if you're
Hmm.
curious, go back.
You want to know where it came from and who we are,
These
and
three
let's go.
parts.
There's three parts. So at this point, you said you were looking at the mind map there, and
Mm.
that we were going to say pick something and then discuss that a bit
How does
more.
it apply?
Yeah. So you said you wanted
So this is what we all do so well. We go into conflicts.
conflict.
Yes. So we have from difficult conversation where we feel very uncomfortable, uh, but it's one thing about conflicts. When we go through them, there's always some change. There is definitely a change
What do you have in mind when you say there's
in
always
a
some change?
relationship. So
Yes.
depending how bad it went, it can permanently change the relationship, but also it can change the person itself, depending what kind of relationship they had with that person. So if you're dependent on that person, obviously that can permanently make you on a guard, and you can behaviorally change. But definitely conflicts influence us significantly simply because they cost a lot. I mean, they really cost. Especially if you go in a conflict with someone who has a power over you. As I said, depending how much this other person, what kind of relationship you carry, it can, we discussed this. That's one conversation can completely dismantle years of, uh,
Sadly true.
yes, and it's amazing how powerful this is, right? And all we did is use language.
Hmm.
We said things.
Well, what we did was we communicated our perspectives. And in essence, if you're looking at conflict, conflict is disagreement that becomes heated. We can have disagreement and not have conflict, but underlying all interpersonal conflict is a difference of opinion. In essence, there's a difference of perspective. So as we would discuss that, if as you know, any subject that comes up, my mind immediately runs to the format of the mind map. And immediately I start thinking in terms of, okay, there's a person here, there's a situation, there are people, there is a thought process, there is an action, there is an outcome, and inevitably there is some reference to the past, present, and future. So there's all of that involved
Interplay.
immediately. So if we look at it and we unpack why would uh, difference of opinion or difference in perspective result in conflict, is because ordinarily when there's conflict, it means we're fighting for something. So if we unpack it and we say the mind map begins with fundamentally understanding what is it that is at the heart of what drives every human being from the time they're born till the moment they die. It is we are fundamentally pushed and pulled in pursuit and preservation of maximal satisfaction. In essence, we all want what's best. And as we
So we don't
navigate
want a
that,
loss.
in essence, we want the best of what's available. And normally I describe it as we'd like to be happy, we'd like to be excited, we would like peace of mind, we'd like contentment, we'd like to gain good and comfortable things. We want things to line up, we want safety, we want security, we don't want loss. That's in essence. And all of that is a matter of perspective. All of those things are a matter of perspective. So we look at it and we say we've got this push in pursuit and preservation. And the reason that's significant is it's what underlies, in at least in significant part, why people don't want to let go of their position. Because if you think that the perspective is the lens through which you're going to see and process your situation, right? We navigate life in the real world through our senses, through what I see, feel, hear, smell, taste. And I'm continually in that state, in that situation, looking for potential opportunity and potential threat. So I'm looking to avoid the potential threat of loss, and I'm looking to take advantage of opportunity, which is a situation in which I can act to bring about a sense or a satisfaction experience. That's pretty much what's happening with each person, knowingly or unknowingly, all the time. So when I'm confronted by somebody who has an opinion that is different to mine, immediately the implication is I could be wrong. Immediately the implication is somebody might think differently of me. So there is an image component. I don't want them to think, something of me that is negative. I don't want them to think that I'm ignorant or that I'm stupid or that I'm whatever else. I also need the self confidence to know that the things that I'm using to navigate my life are reliable. So the moment there's a difference of opinion, even though it's not necessarily intentional, it's implied. If I think this is a cell phone or a mobile phone and you think it's a wireless mouse, the bottom line is we can't both be right. And the implication is that when you indicate to me that you have a difference of opinion, I'm immediately mindful of the fact that you think I'm wrong. And I've got to sit with the situation to say, if I'm wrong, then I'm not going to be successful in my pursuit or preservation of maximal satisfaction. And that's a big problem. So, what's underlying all of these issues, the moment we're confronted with difference of opinion, it is threatening if we are not willing to go ahead and consider that I could be wrong and that I have a potential opportunity to learn, and I don't have to get people to agree with me through argument. Conflict is really a product of an argument to get another person to agree or to submit. Now, the bottom line is, as I said, if we overcome all of those other things that I've just described, and we're like, well, I can have a difference of opinion with somebody and be able to discuss it openly. And if I went in with a word that you love with curiosity, I'd love to know what makes that person think something different to what I think, because here's the possibility. They know something I don't know. And I may have an opportunity here to learn something to add to the construction of my perspective, which will actually position me better for how I might interpret my situation and potential threat of loss and potential gain going forward. The point is that implies, in order for me to be in that position, is that I'm willing to be shown that I'm wrong. I'm willing to change what it is I think or I believe, because I think it is going to be beneficial to me and the people who rely on me. The problem is this, is the moment pride is involved and says, you know what, it's not about what this is it's about the fact that you need to know that I'm wrong and I will stand for what I stand for. Now what we find is many of the conflicts are not about the detail that triggered them. It's about the person or the people involved. So many of the issues of conflict are not because of the specific thing that they started out with in terms of difference of opinion, is they become personal. And that's why I say to people, every disagreement is personal, whether you're aiming for it to be
Yes.
or otherwise. And because it's personal, what you'll find very, very quickly is we will drift away from the thing that we were talking about, and now it becomes a character attack. And you'll see this happen very, very quickly in a disagreement that's basically degrading into a conflict. It becomes personal to the point where there is character attack, where there is an
Yes.
attempt to.
How can you be right considering who you are?
Exactly.
And
So
so
if
they're picking up an evidence to show that,
100%.
yes.
So if I can basically discredit you in another area, then I can validate my position right now. And what we realize is that's usually, again, because I'm afraid. I'm afraid to be wrong. And what's at the heart of that, again, on the mind map, it's the second thing that causes dissatisfaction, a difference of opinion. Why? Because, as I said, we intuitively know I have to be right in order to be successful in terms of making the right decisions, doing the right thing. And it's a matter of identity. It's a matter of
Sure.
identity. So what underlies most of the conflict issues really relate to its identity. And I believe that it has to be this way in order for it to have the best outcome. And that's why we don't let it go easily, is because if I think this is the best thing and I want the best thing and I want the best thing for you, I might fight with you. And you think that what you have is the best thing and the best thing for you and the best thing for me. And therefore we can't yield necessarily, because that would be a violation of the pursuit of what's best. Step back, have a look and see really what's really in play here. So that underlies a lot of what's going on in terms of why we argue to try and bring
So
about
it's interesting
agreement.
how we can. So few things for me, obviously, misjudgment of what's the biggest loss here. I
Yes,
think quite often, but it's interesting with whom we fight the most. I mean, those we love the most, we fight the most,
oftentimes.
or we are closest to,
Yes,
and so the more we are connected to someone, clearly the probabilities that we will be probably in a conflict, more emotionally invested. And this is quite interesting, right? So, why is that? And then you realize that the usually decision made and me accepting yours when your way means I will still play the part in that rolling out.
yes,
So now the question is of cost, and the cost will be on me. So if we go with something I disagree, and
yes,
I'm involved
yes.
in,
It's really tough at times.
yes, then I'm literally already projecting expectation, and I don't want to go there. So it is, you're right, it is personal, especially if I'm so in with the intimate relationships. We see one of the worst conflicts, really. People go very far and they throw insults, they throw. It's amazing how threatening those. I mean, conflicts are in terms of complete relationship change. They can overpower complete logic in thinking. But so now my question to you: why do we have one of the worst fights with those people who we are the closest with? And I don't mean only work. And work is
Work
the
is fine,
different power struggle. In
right?
work, we see power struggle more, but in intimate relationships, it's quite interesting to see how, for the lack of a better word, crazy we get.
Yeah. And I'll say to you, because there are a couple of things. So, in no particular order, but ordinarily, if we are close to somebody, we think that we would agree, right?
Yes.
Ordinarily, if we're
You should
close
read
to
my
somebody,
mind by now.
by now you would know, you would think. So,
Yes.
remember, the fifth thing on the mind map in terms of what creates dissatisfaction is unmet expectation. So if I'm expecting you to agree with me on something here and you don't agree with me, or
You
you're
should be
not
on my side.
enthusiastic even
Yes.
about what we're dealing with, number one, that's an unmet expectation. The unmet expectation is immediately accompanied when the experience is to the downside by a negative emotion and question marks. And the question mark is here, what's wrong with this person? The question is, did I get something wrong? People are not usually the ones who are checking themselves first. There are certain kinds of people who are quick to want to avoid conflict and just say, okay, it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault. That's a different kind of individual, right? It's a coping mechanism in many respects. But the bottom line is, the moment we don't have agreement with somebody we expected to agree with us, that unmet expectation catches us by surprise. The moment surprise is involved, emotions have a substantially bigger impact on the perspective. So emotions distort the perspective, making small things big things, and immediately draws in things from the past, right? Or draw in potentially things that may be, a consequence or a potential outcome that is problematic if this disagreement is there. So all of a sudden, lots of things come rushing into this little area, which heightens the sense of urgency and importance of what's at stake. Remember, because we are being pushed by the pursuit of maximal satisfaction, and we believe that we should be aligned and you should align with me and all of these kinds of things, that heightens the intensity even further to make sure that you agree with me as quickly as possible. Hence, argument, hence, anger, oftentimes. When things are not going the way I want, in essence, we remember what underlies anger: not getting what I want, not getting what I think I deserve, or things aren't as they should be. The moment I'm confronted with anything like that, which a disagreement with a very close person is likely to elicit, that is going to elicit a corrective response, which is anger, which is, I need to make sure that you get corrected right now so that we can get back on track and continue with my plan, which is obviously the best one. Well, when the other person is of a similar opinion, or the other person feels that they've now been treated disrespectfully or that their position has not been considered, well, again, now we're not even talking about this thing that we had a disagreement on. Now we're talking about something else. So because we're close to them and because we've had so many other experiences, we rapidly have things come flooding into that, sort of small working memory area, which is going to create, again, a massively more intense experience and usually going to make it much more heated. However, when there are people who are close, who know that that might be the tendency, oftentimes one party is going to say, for sake of minimizing the cost, I will step back, I will offer verbal agreement, I will concede, I will, give in to whatever the
Even if
particular
it's not
person,
authentic.
if, I will go ahead and do that. The problem with those kinds of things is oftentimes it's evident that it's not authentic,
And backfire down the line.
or down the line, it's going to come and bite you because you agreed with me last time. So we
Yes.
realize that handling conflict and understanding where it's coming from and how it's escalated and sort of, sort of expanded into other areas is so important because, as you said, once that heated experience is there, especially with somebody who's close, the natural tendency is to pull us or push us apart. And that's when relationships become cold, right? There is a distance. There is now a protection of self and my position that isn't in battle, it's in recovery. So oftentimes, as I said, it's I'm not expecting this person to disagree with me, or I'm not expecting this person to disagree with me in the disrespectful way that they seemingly disagreed with me. So there is what is spoken, there's the tone with which it's spoken, there's the body language. I know that look. I
Yeah.
know when I know exactly what there's assumption. Those assumptions come rushing in to complete ideas again. And what you realize is that unless there is the humility to say, okay, hang on a second, we've got a difference of opinion here. We have a disagreement. Let's establish its significance first and foremost, right? What is this really in the bigger scheme of things? Usually, again, that difference is not the detail, it's what the detail represents in terms of being personal, in terms of those kinds of things. So, oftentimes, again, we feel that for the other person's best interest, it's best that they agree with me because I know better and I'm willing to fight for them because at the end of the day, it works out well for them. Well, again, that may or may not be the case, but that's another reason why we might insist on it being our particular way because the other person they just, whether they don't know, whether they're ignorant or they don't have all the facts, I don't have the time necessarily to explain everything. So I'm just going to forcefully insist that it's mine, knowing they're going to submit and that's going to work out well for them anyway.
I'm going to come in and I'm going to share where my mind is going right now. So, quite often, we don't have conversations that are around how we see things or, scripts that we write in our head about what kind of marriage is the best marriage, what kind of partner I deserve or I want, what kind of values I'm gonna die for, and they really my whole identity revolves around. These are not conversations we have anyway, in time of peace, right? We kind of come up to these assumptions to realize there was something I didn't know before about this other person,
Yes.
and they're fighting for it right now, and I had no idea. And we have a literally such a difference around it. We never even knew about it. So this assumption means I already in my head I already lived it. All you had
Yeah.
to do is
It's
tag
real.
along,
Correct.
right? So now I realize this is not going to happen. So now I have to change the course. You just calculate it's like, okay, so if they don't come along with me and I can't go without them, so I have to change the whole script, the whole future kind of things that I already was looking forward and already expected.
Yes.
They played out almost. So and so we don't get to have this conversation at all, and and we come up with these scenarios and thinking that the other person shares them, knows them, can anticipate them by now, would have would be searching for them without you encourage them to search for them or ask about them. So and then in the conflict, this all rolls out, and it's interesting. So the conflict itself could just show that the parts that we didn't discuss. Honestly, I mean,
Oftentimes
it could be
reveals that.
it could be wonderful.
Sure.
So it's interesting that we don't step down. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's something I didn't know about you.
Hmm.
Really, I was like, and so during the conflict, what now? So obviously we have this. It's playing out, right? And you hurt. I mean, most people think, oh, I should be a superhuman. I shouldn't feel hurt. I'm shouting. And funny enough, I'm going to repeat this. This was in really in my family. So I'm loud. I mean, I end up being loud. While that doesn't change how well I think, at least I hope so. I still keep very much thought and I'm present and I know why I'm saying certain things, but I say them loud, and so the tone of voice became so much more important than what I'm saying. And it became opportunity just like to literally dismiss me. It was like, oh, no, 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 but that tone of voice. So, and I always thought, why has to be so loud, right? It's interesting.
What was
Why?
your conclusion?
So it obviously it's a bit of a heritage, to be honest. We dealt with it in the family. So the loudest when we
There it
the
is. I
loudest when
want to
we were
win.
shouting endlessly. I was like, it's amazing. It sounded to me like a power of voice would win.
Intensity
It was
wins.
literally
That's the
absolutely. It was like
idea.
you go in a war and that was your weapon. It's like and who longest staying shouting, would take the trophy home. Yeah. And so it was perseverance through shouting. It was amazing. So, but also one thing that shouting added was an accent of hurt, right? So because I'm so loud, it should show you how hurt I am,
Correct.
how much this means to me. So
Yes.
adding that layer was adding, it's like, can't you hear how much I need this or this is important to me? It's almost like a SOS. All eyes on me, listen. So I'm not letting go. And so I realized, wait, clearly it's not moving us anywhere, right? It's not helping. So I asked, what's going on? I actually asked, why is this not working? Say, well, if you can just tone down. And then you realize, okay, so there is a heritage of past that is coming in. It has nothing to do with the people around me, really. So I'm fighting the ghosts in the room, okay? And then they have nothing to do with the people around. And okay, so what really is going on? So it's amazing. During the conflict, you can have this observation.
Yeah.
And again, what really shows if you start paying attention, and that's a shift from others to self.
Mhm.
It's amazing how quickly conflict changes in dynamics. So, okay, so you think like if I was on their side, how would that look? Like
Mhm.
what would I listen to this person? Would I listen to myself? Would I hear myself? Like, would I care about what I thought if they were addressing me with that tone, with that body, with that intensity? How would that feel? Right. So you start looking at self and that just changes everything. So you go, no, no, no. And what else can I try? So it shifts everything. It expands. So from position I'm right to examining my accountability in that space and time. Because it can't
Exactly.
be one person. It can't be. This is a really what I say invites the other person. So they can't read my mind. They can only hear what I said. And it's very often that people think that we, with full intention, we choose our words. Like, of all the words you could say, you chose that. So now I'm going to judge you on this. Right. So you are conscious, you intentionally, and you wanted to hurt me. Right. So there is, so I'm going to, so that's how we become defensive as well. So,
Yeah.
you
It
know,
justifies
so,
defense.
the most vulnerable side of myself, and then you've weaponized yourself with it and you went straight for it. Like, that's very painful. And of all the people you shouldn't, you're the one that I never expected. So it becomes, that's where that personal part. But the most powerful thing for the shift of conflict is holding yourself accountable in that moment. Okay. So you remember what you said, live well now? Okay. So speak well now.
Yeah.
Hold yourself well now. Do the right thing now.
Yes.
Because that's all I have now in a conflict. It's shouting, and it's going crazy. I mean, and it's amazing. You can actually stop. I tried this. I actually try. You stop. You stop shouting. Suddenly, you're like, it's like a mute movie. It goes no tone anymore. Like we're in space. You can, and suddenly everyone stops. You hold 10 seconds without voice, everyone resets. Literally that fast. Just like the music can change your consciousness from anger to literally moving your body to the beat, you can. And so no matter of how strong emotions are, holding back mirror to self, what is the right thing to do right now, myself, right now? If I was looking from the position of outside and you suddenly expand the choices of words, of what you're gonna do, and what you said, it's interesting, reset.
Mhm.
A bit of more compassion. Yeah, I messed it up. I'm gonna fix it right now. I can still fix it. I can say sorry, right? I mean, every
Yes.
moment you can say sorry. And
Yes.
the sorry is not to surrender. This is very interesting what you mentioned. It's not to surrender.
Yes.
It's a breathing space. You're introducing a breathing space. You're almost resetting the mood and lowering the emotions. One thing about your course of the emotions that I love is how, and you said unhelpful emotion. And if you can expand a little, what is unhelpful emotion? Because during the conflict, they ride. I mean, the whole wind in the sail is coming from emotion. You will lose so much of logic just purely going on and becoming emotion. I'm angry and so I'm going to use angry words. I'm going to fire everything out and I'm going to be self-defensive. And while anger can be just emotions like, what now? Like, I feel angry. Why am I so? I went too
So
far now.
no, no, no. I'm sitting listening and I'm thinking it's so well sort of articulated in terms of what it feels like in the moment, and then to check yourself. So while you're talking there, I'm thinking along the lines, what we stand for in Perspective for Life is check yourself first, and that's
Yeah,
really what you pointed to, because it's a recognition I can influence other people, but I can't control them. I can control
absolutely.
myself
Yes.
if I have a good reason to, and I'm clear on why. So, what you were saying in that situation, one of the things that we would hold to, and these are the kinds of things that will come up consistently, is ask before you assume. Why is there so much conflict? For all of the reasons we've already discussed, but because there are so many assumptions. So, ask, state intention, ask questions, establish the other person's perspective, establish all those things which will help us either arrive at we actually do agree on this, or we agree on something more important and we can quiet the things down. The point on the question on unhelpful emotions is I think if we consider how many emotions we have, and if we consider what an emotion is, it's a mind body response to an experience, real or imagined, right? So let's talk it through here. You and I come, we talk about this. You say, hey, Ryan, I love your mobile phone. I say, Malik, that's not a mobile phone, right? So we start. I'm not expecting you to go ahead and do that. Immediately, there's a question mark. I'm not going to say, hey, what makes you think that? That's not usually our default position. We assume, okay, why is she either teasing me, setting me up? What is it? She knows better than that. Where are we going with this? There's an uncertainty. Whatever it might be going, that's an assumption. What is she intending? The mind can race. The point is, there might be an emotion, especially if there are things in the past that now infiltrates my perspective. And I said already, that mind body response might involve adrenaline, it might involve these kinds of things and distorts my perspective. Now, what I don't want is I don't want an emotion, which is, again, a response to an experience, which is there to basically express to myself and the other person what I just experienced. It's an emotion is there to reveal something, and an emotion is there to basically add motivation to what am I going to do in response to this. It's also there to impress things on me, to remind me, hey, this is something you mustn't forget, or this is something you must remember to do again. Those are the roles that emotions are playing. The problem again is if emotions are involved with something unexpected, okay, as I said, the moment there is a surprise element to the upside or the downside, the mind body response is usually intensified, which means that the distortion is even bigger. Now, here's the danger. If the distortion of my perspective, which is where I'm processing everything, both my response and my interpretation of what's happening, if that's distorted, the likelihood is I'm not going to be able to communicate or interpret reliably. Now, if my emotion is in response to something that I wasn't expecting, but my expectation, which is rooted in my beliefs and all of, my perspective, right? It may reveal that I was expecting something that wasn't reasonable. Okay. So, what I'm trying to establish in that course again is check the emotion. What am I feeling?
Exactly.
Okay. Then ask, what was I expecting? And then try and establish what I was expecting is, in essence, a forecast of what I think would happen. Now, it's not planned necessarily. It's anything that catches you by surprise is an indication you weren't expecting that either in that moment or ever or whatever it might be. The thing that we're trying to establish is, where did my expectation come from? Is it reasonable? So if my expectation is not reasonable, in other words, I was expecting you to do something that really isn't something that I should expect you to do, the emotion that comes, if I'm not able to see that my expectation is unreasonable, the emotion is going to follow and it will be completely unhelpful in the context of what is happening right now. It's not appropriate to the situation. It doesn't fit. It may be bigger than what it needs to be. And therefore, it produces a response or reaction that might now elicit from you an emotional experience. And now we basically go ahead and the whole thing goes ahead and explodes. The point is the idea, if the situation really is one of a genuine disagreement where there genuinely is something at stake, the emotion is supposed to fuel, in many respects, the discussion, the urgency, the importance. It's supposed to fulfill a helpful role. Unhelpful emotions are emotions that are elicited due to unmet expectations and expectations that were not reasonable or not rooted in reality. In other words, they came from my perspective, which again, who knows where that perspective, particular
Yeah.
thing was constructed, how it was constructed, where it came from. So the whole point is to check self first, is to see, am I being reasonable? Because if I'm not being reasonable, then the probability is my emotion is inappropriate, unhelpful, and certainly going to contribute to probably more danger or damage than it is anything that is beneficial. So making sure that our expectations are as reasonable as and reliable as possible is why Perspective for Life stands for keep it real. Keep it real. Okay. Now, we don't always know what that is, which is why if we went in with the mindset that the moment I'm confronted with a difference of opinion, let me be curious as to try and establish what is it that this person thinks that makes her think that this is a phone, right? That I might have to learn from, or I might have to see, hey, there's another issue here, or I might be able to go ahead and understand that situation better without this unhelpful, distorting emotion that's going to end up probably taking us further away from
Yes.
a good relationship than towards the one that, in all truth, when we're cool, calm, and collected, we probably would want and we would probably intend for. Again, remember what underlies most argument or most disagreement there is an intention. And often the intention is good, which is why we will tend to fight and fight and fight because we've rationalized or justified our position as being valuable to ourselves and to the other person. Therefore, they are worth fighting with. Again, very seldom do we arrive at agreement through argument. We arrive at agreement through discussion. And we might arrive at agreement on something other than the detail of what we're having because it's more important. And that is heavily dependent on communication. And part of communication is to ask the question before I assume.
It's interesting because if you think about it, so we want to show, so the partner wants to see that we love them, we care about them, then that we see them, we hear them. And so the question is, how do we do that? How do we show? And it's really asking questions and trying to understand rather than enforce ourselves. So you ask yourself, so what would in conflict, how would conversation be, discussion when we are So the position is let me understand you and and so asking how can I help you understand me? Now, these are hard. I mean, this is not easy at all. We speak about it, it's like intuitively, we'll all the yes,
Yeah.
but in the
In the
moment,
moment of saying,
it stops. But the point is that you go back to the course. So yes, you lose a little bit, but then the point of this, what we are saying is go back, like keep going back to where it's going to be more helpful. So it's correcting the course. So you go off, you see things are kind of going up a little bit. It's like, up, and you
yes,
notice it. You become aware.
that's the awareness
So
component.
that's exactly it. So check yourself. So you're looking at what's going on. So the other person's getting louder. Okay, let me ask what's going on. So obviously that didn't help. So it's really holding the core, where we still want to be and how best to manage this, never losing it. But otherwise,
That's
I mean, we will
But that's when there's good intention. And that's we need to be able to pick up very
exactly.
early, because exactly what you were saying there, we might have a disagreement with somebody who's finding delight in the disagreement.
Oh yeah,
So we
yeah,
might have somebody who's provoking things, who's actually
yes,
stirring things up. We want to be able to pick up on that very quickly. And
exactly.
oftentimes, again, that is going to come from asking the question, do you want to resolve this? Is this something you actually want us to try and figure out? Or is this something that you're just enjoying right now? Is this something that you have something else that you are wanting to actually go ahead and do? The openness of communication to ask the right questions is very, very helpful in basically saying, well, we have the disagreement, but it doesn't seem like there's an intention here to try and resolve anything or understand anything. Part of what I was sort of motioning towards when you were saying, let's have the discussion to understand, I'd say that's vital, but there's something else that is oftentimes not considered. And that is, can my attitude be one that relates to, I want to be not only, I want to understand, but I want to have an attitude that is understanding. In other words, I might still disagree with you, but I can really understand why it is you feel the way you feel and the way you are trying to cling to this. And I can respect that without having to agree to what you're saying. And that's where the value of the other person comes in as we consider, is this really a person that I need to allow conflict to
Exactly.
develop with, where I can value them and say to them, I really, really disagree with you, but I appreciate you. I respect you if you do. If you don't say that, right? Don't say it. Just say, you know what?
Because they build expectation on that as well.
Nothing goes unheard, right?
Exactly.
Now, whether it goes, how it's factored in, that's a different story.
Yes.
But to be able to say, you know what, I actually don't agree with you. And in fact, I don't even appreciate the way you're having this discussion. And I really don't see this going any way that is useful to either of us. So, you know what, I'm stepping out. I'm not going to argue or have this discussion any further. Sometimes that way of diffusing an argument is the only thing that we've got, because otherwise we become a participant in what is just genuinely a battle for a battle's sake.
It's
And there's no
interesting.
value there.
I was thinking also about this, and sometimes you can. I mean, I know I asked. I mean, how do you think this is going for us
Mm,
now? You can literally ask because now suddenly you're inviting them again to a
yeah,
common goal. You're reminding them.
yeah.
So there was a common goal, right? So how do you think this is going on right now? How would you assess where we are right now in this conversation? And especially if you're even going all emotional, it's like you literally can invite the person to come on your side and watch it. Suddenly you're again in the same team, like on the same team. Yeah.
Remember something. If at the heart of all conflict is disagreement handled poorly, the source of solution or the way in which we overcome the conflict is through agreement.
Exactly.
Agreement of what?
Finding again,
Find something. If
exactly.
that's the only thing that anybody would take away from this, apart from hopefully ask before you assume, figure out very quickly, what do we agree on? Bring that into the discussion so that you know we are on the same team. This is something we agree on. The intention may be the same. Both of us want what's best. The argument might be over which restaurant we're going to. I want us both to have a good time. I want us both. I want you to enjoy. And I'm in essence, I'm fighting with whatever it might be. Bring it out, open it up. And again, this is where communication is so vital to establishing the kinds of means of establishing where is this person at? Why are they at where they're at? Where am I at? Why am I at where I'm at? And how is it that we are going to navigate what is something that potentially can be tremendously destructive in a way that allows us to resume? Sometimes it might be we need a bit of a cooling off time. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, in our current states of mind, we're
Yeah.
probably not going to arrive at the kind of agreement we want, but we can find agreement in that neither of us are right now in the best state of mind to continue this conversation. That doesn't mean wipe it under the rug. That doesn't mean we won't revisit it. It means now is not going to probably be the time we establish or achieve what ultimately I think both of us would want.
So I was just, as you were speaking, I was thinking the more predictable I am to the other person, the safer they feel to come as they are. I just, because if I have that self-awareness, and then that usually grow, and the self-control grows over time, really, and self-regulation, I would say, in this life, and emotions, and you kind of knowing what's going on, you probably show up quite often in a very predictable way in terms of how you communicate. And so the other person is feeling safer to really say how they feel and say what they want. And so that's a more honest conversation. So
So, related to that, oftentimes, again, if you know you're going to say something that may be interpreted in a poor way, sort of carry that thing that you're going to say in a way that basically would say, I know what I'm about to say is likely to hurt. My intention is not to hurt. Again, a good friend of mine once said, sometimes what we need to do is we need to present hard truths in soft ways. Okay. And that implies I can't dilute the facts here for sake of trying to make sure you feel better. But I can maintain what is real and factually accurate as best I can with good intention, but I can present it in a way that is as sensitive as possible. A surgeon with a scalpel who was not careful can do tremendous damage. The scalpel will still cut, but I need to use that in a way that is ultimately for the benefit rather than the detriment of the other person. So being able to take all of these things, and it comes with practice in many
absolutely.
ways.
And it's actually quite worth
But
the
you need to
practice.
know about it first. You need to actually know about
Exactly.
it and understand
Yes.
how it fits in before you're able to say, you know what, I want to try that.
I remember a lot of, I worked with parents, and, they would read all of these books. And then eventually the book came out. It was phenomenal. The book that was full of dialogue. It was literally case studies. So if the child said this, and then you say this, and it was like literally sentences were given to the parents, because most parents were saying, I'm tired, I'm emotional. And then I say things, and I actually don't know what to say. So can someone tell me what to say? So this woman wrote the book, What to Say.
I love it.
And it was like, it was all different dialogues, different conflict positions, or difficult conversations with kids, right? So if I do this, then say this, or how do I calm myself
Do you
down?
recall the book?
It's that, I think, What to Say. I mean,
Is that
I
what
sh-
it is?
I think that was the one, and I recommend it to a lot of parents. And they were really for young children, right? Because
Yeah.
most parents struggle convey the conversations to the
Yeah.
young child, that is just so reactive. Honestly, it's not something you can reason endlessly. Um, so it was what to, kind of save my energy and come to some agreement and move along. But it was brilliant. I thought it's exactly what most people ask is like, how do you practice this? Well, you have to know what to really
Have to know.
what will be inflammatory. And
Yeah.
I keep coming back, why we see resentment growing over time. So people who are erratic, rigid, they really keep showing up combative. They don't let go. One person let go for the sake of hoping they will eventually see that you are resigning simply because you see value in them staying together, relationship. Oh, come on, this is not worthy of a relationship. And then they can internalize this and hope you will at one point come to your senses and see what they're doing. And this accumulates, and, murder by a million paper cuts. I mean, it's just a resentment grows because I keep shrinking myself to such a small size. There's no more space for me to be who I am, what I am. My wants, needs are all reducing for the sake you're taking more and more territory. So I think you can see this, and then resentment usually is the final stage. It's amazing how many marriages come up.
They fall down there. They break
Yes.
there.
It's just it's a murder weapon for the relationship. Resentment is, I can't stand you. I can't listen to you. I don't want to use any more tools. Even when we present them to all of these tools, I'm done. Decision has been made. Amazing. In the resentment state, decision has been. Although they know it's possible, they don't want to go with it. I'm out. It's costing me so much, and the effort suddenly becomes. And what's the point?
It's always going to be as a result of conflict managed poorly
Over and over and over.
So this is a really important subject. Again,
But repair, we haven't. Right. Look, there's a conflict poorly done.
Yes.
And he really played out poorly.
Well, again,
and then repair.
And
then repair is still possible.
Okay, so we're going to have to pick up on that another time.
How to repair?
How in a state of conflict, how do we either
it's a post-conflict repair,
or a post-conflict repair? So you're going to have to make a note of that because I'm probably going to forget it. But okay, we'll add that as to a part 2 on conflict. Thanks, Malik. I think a very important subject.
Thank you, Ryan.